Alright, quick response video, hopefully. It won't be quick. As I'll play some of his video. Modern Mystic. Really kind of irritating, really late. So I shouldn't be making this video, but I'm going to do it anyway. I shouldn't watch his videos late. Not a good idea. Don't know if he'll respond to it. Don't know if he's listening to my videos. Probably have to post it on his website. I don't know. I don't really want to make another account somewhere. But anyway, doesn't matter. So he's telling this story about what money is, and I think it's just totally wrong. So I'm going to give it another explanation. So his explanation basically is that the rich made deals with the king, basically, to bargain for, when the king needed resources, when they needed a lot of money fast to pay soldiers to fight wars. They would get the money from the rich and say, to get the gold from the rich that the rich were hoarding as surplus, and be able to move that. That's how Rothschild was famous for dealing in gold. That's where they made their fortune, was the gold market, and selling it to emperors so they could finance wars. And there's big money in that. Anyway, so yeah, that's part of history. But money and wealth was around a long time before the kings of, the modern kings of 200, 300 years ago. Biblical times, it was kings. Rome. Come on, money's been around a long, long, long time, and I think it's just kind of silly to talk about money. Well, silly. Money as if it's something that just happened in England. Like England invented money. No, I don't think so. Or banking. Sorry. Look, what the deal was money was a way of enforcing contracts. Okay, that was the whole function and use of money. In the old days, okay, you would make a deal. Like, say if there was a rich guy, you'd make a deal. You'd borrow from him, and you'd have a contract, an IOU, a piece of paper saying, I owe you back, the 10 sheep I borrowed from you because I had a bad year, blah, blah, blah. So you keep me alive for a few years, then I'll pay you back with interest, blah, blah, blah. And it was on a piece of paper. And the problem was it was hard for people to enforce a piece of paper. It was, even then, somebody would die or you couldn't get it from the family, or somebody wouldn't pay, and then you'd have to go to court, and, nightmare all over the place. So, yeah, that was a real problem. So it was convenient, and through the process that Nick is sort of describing, that maybe it started with the wealthy having this money stuff guaranteed by some authority. So the point is if you had a contract signed by the king, all right, that would be, you wouldn't have to worry about going to court. You wouldn't have to worry about crap. Okay, that's going to be good stuff. It's almost a seal of approval kind of thing, where it's not your word against some other guy. You don't got to worry about him dying or something else because it's the empire kind of thing. And so that had real cachet. That was the real deal kind of paper. So you wanted an IOU written in king script. And so that's the origins of it, is that it was good contract paper. So instead of making out contracts for individual things, like I'll give you 5 sheep, you give me 3 banana peels and a partridge in a pear tree, and you exchange some sort of piece of paper with all this crap written on it, you just go for value. And you just say, well, here's a note for 10 pineapple trees, and then you just mark everything else relative to the value of those 10 pineapple trees. And that in those days it was gold, but it doesn't really matter what the standard is. The standard is just a relative standard to everything else in the economy. And so you're basically just say, okay, I'll give me 3 of those 10s because I'm going to give you real sheep and they're worth money, and these trees aren't worth quite as much as these sheep. So give me 3 of those 10 bills. And you bargain a price, and then you hand out bills that are worth this fixed amount of stuff. And so then when you get to the more modern era, I think he just botches that up too. The system creates this currency stuff, the governments. And he's talking like this is just complete folly, like it was nonsense from the very beginning or something. And it wasn't. It was perfectly sensible. What you basically do is you establish that people can come in and they can give you stuff that's worth something, a mortgage to your house, your car, well, your stagecoach. They could give you gold, and they take in this stuff and they give you the currency, the paper that you could go anywhere with, all right, in cash. And so it was very convenient. Okay, you didn't have to carry around your house on the back of yourself, and you didn't have to bargain with a piece of your house. Here's my front door. Okay, give me a bag of flour. All right. Instead, you could go and say, here's some cash. Here's 10, pineapple trees or whatever, bushes, plants, whatever. And so there's nothing wrong with the American currency. There's nothing wrong with the British pound. All of these things were perfectly functional mechanisms. And there was never too much of it in circulation not to have real value gotten back. 5 years ago, there was only $3 trillion in American currency. I mean, you could sell the Great Lakes for $3 trillion. I mean, the government certainly could pay back 3 trillion stinking little weaselly dollars. So that was no problem. And the real point is the bank has contracts with the bankers, basically collateralizing all the cash anyway. So the bank can pay Peter if he comes in and says, give me something for my dollar bills, the bank just goes to Paul and says, well, give us back what you owe us. Give us the gold or whatever, the value, and they'll just get back the money deposited. Well, they'll just take back what they possess that's loaned out through the banks. Yeah, they'll just repossess their ownership. Where the money went out and nothing came in, kind of thing, or whatever. But the point is, all the cash is accounted for. The system was perfectly functional. Cash was all it was contract paper. It had no real value. It was just a contract, and it just said that this is worth that. And and a standard was stupid anyway. Having a gold standard was stupid. We didn't need it anymore, because we'd already standardized the price of a dollar bill to wheat and corn and oil and a million other things. So we didn't need it to be standardized to one thing anymore. It didn't have to say 10 banana trees or 10 pounds of gold or 5 pounds. It didn't have to say any of that anymore, because the standard was always kind of built into it. And it's completely idiotic to sit there and hoard a bunch of gold in a vault somewhere. Now, if you're talking about maybe having a fuel reserve, well, that makes sense. So the government might as well have a oil reserve, okay, and have oil-backed money. That could make some sense, because you need to have a reserve anyway. So if you're going to possess a reserve, you might as well call it the collateral for the American dollar. But it was really stupid to lock up a valuable resource that was already rare, and now to make it even more rare by everybody shoving it into vaults someplace. That was really dumb. And to have a currency completely dependent on a commodity that somebody else could flood the market with meant that your currency was completely erosible. Somebody could just destroy your currency. They could knock half the value of your currency out by just flooding the market with gold they had stored or reserved. So it was stupid to have a gold standard. It had no meaning. I mean, as long as the value of a bill is established based on the number of them in circulation, and that's basically the truth of it. The value of it will be established by the number of them in circulation. All right, what else? Yeah, and you really want currency to degrade in value, just slowly. You want there to be a little bit of inflation that'll cut into the value of the currency, the paper, every year, so nobody will have an incentive to hoard it. Everybody will always have an incentive to not keep too much of it on hand, to have it invested in the economy, to have it invested in something, to have it moving through the economy. And that's another key feature that makes paper money so much better than commodity money, is the fact that the paper represents the stored surplus. So now the stored surplus is actually in the world instead of being stuck in a vault somewhere. It's actually usable. Your house has power to build new houses because of its value. And its value isn't just locked up in the house, kind of thing. So anyway, I just think it's just a wrong description of history, and I think it's a wrong metaphor, and I think it's a wrong description of what the liability was. So the real liability was when they started to borrow money. These are two distinctly different things. The currency and the bonds are two different things. All right, and yes, the bonds are payable in currency, unfortunately. So yes, the bonds will destroy the currency because the bonds have to be paid in currency. The debt has to be paid. It's another level. It's another kind of currency, but it's completely different than money, and it's exclusively something created for the luxury of the rich. So the rich could acquire more ownership paper, more IOUs. All right, and that's this whole capitalist bullshit system that you defend is built on. It's just built on collecting IOUs, collecting claims, collecting rent receipts. And that's all what this whole economy is about. And that's why the whole housing thing and all the rest of this crap is all going to crash, is because all these rent receipts, these are all claims on value. And as you keep acquiring more, as the rich keep acquiring more and more ownership, okay, and that's what they've acquired, is real ownership. People think they own something. They don't own anything. Nobody owns anything. Okay, they have all the IOUs. They own it. Whether you think you own it or not, they own it. Because they own the inflation that'll destroy the dollar, that'll destroy the value of everything you think you possess, which is nothing. All right, because your indebtedness to them has accrued to a preposterous proportion. So yeah, you might think you have $200,000 in equity because you own your house and you own your car. You don't own shit because you owe those rich people even more money than that. And that's the problem. And it was caused by printing bonds, by the government overtly, directly, right in front of its own face. It bought the future on the credit card. It went every year and said, ring it up on the card, ring it up on the card, ring it up on the card. I mean, quite obviously. And they just kept doing it because it was working. Okay, it stimulates the economy. The stock market goes up. The rich get richer. And everybody thinks their boat's going to get floated because the rich guy's getting richer, that somehow they're going to get richer. And he talks like none of this has cost us anything. Like somehow, but because of free energy and all this other stuff, we've had a great life. We could have had twice as good a life, 3 times as good a life, as we would have thrown the rich overboard 50 years ago. All right, we could be working half as much and making twice as much, have twice as much real goods for the work we do if we weren't paying a bunch of rich people to polish their floors and manicure their lawns and waste our energy. We could be building Hoover dams instead of fucking polishing their goddamn fucking toenails. And that's the fucking truth. The rich have been a preposterous waste of human potential and resources. They control all the capital dollars that will get invested. They're going to decide what gets invested in, and they're not going to invest in the poor person's life or the middle class life if those consumers aren't giving them a profit. As soon as the profit stops, their investment in the people will stop. And that's why they have to be stopped before they pull the fucking rug right out from under everybody. And they're going to go down in the crash anyway, most of them, a good proportion of them. Of course, there will be the clever ones, okay, who short everything and get to buy the entire world at a fire sale like happened in Russia. To blame money system as if the money system was the corruption. No, the money system was fine. The currency system was fine. There was nothing wrong with currency. Okay, all it was contract paper. Nice, reliable, dependable contract paper. The flaw was borrowing. Alright, so I'll play some of this just to point out. You can just see how wrong he is about how he's describing history.
For the 99% that was working so well for the 1%. So the 1% dealt with the king's bits of paper, and that was fine for them. And they kind of said, well, have something for the rest of them, so set up banks that can do a similar sort of thing.
Yeah, there was banks a long, long time ago. The rich were loaning the poor money a long, 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 long time ago. So this is just crap. Sorry, this is just crap.
So it's the banks that was representing the king, and then the bits of paper went out to the proletariat from the banks. Kind of a mini-me system of king and top 1% was set.
Look, there's 2 elements to this. One element is turning surplus into something usable in the economy, investment capital, and the other element of this is acquiring ownership and collecting rents. Okay, those are the 2 elements. That is the difference between cash and bonds. There's 2 different machines working in this economy. two different kinds of functionality. The currency system is a reasonable, rational system. The fucking acquire ownership of everything and rent it to the world and then re-rent it to them and then re-rent it to them through 15 middlemen, all the derivatives and all the other bullshit, all these claims of ownership that are claims on ownership of somebody's debt, of somebody's debt, of somebody's debt, of somebody's claim to ownership. That the ownership is now through so many levels of debt that have absolutely no rational proportion to the actual pie that exists. There's 50 pieces of pie. There's 500 claims for a piece of pie. It's obviously an oversold pie. All right, this is the producer racket. There was nothing wrong with this system as long as you didn't create those bonds. Those bonds were the fake money. They were the uncollateralized loans. All right? The currency was collateralized. The bonds are not. Two entirely different things. One pays interest, one does not.
Set up where it was banks and the proletariat. It's not quite right, but it's a very useful way of imagining the system was, and it's really not that far off. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think it's really far off. Okay, I really do. I think it's pretty far off. All right, so he goes on to say what I basically said he said, and we'll finish up here at the ending. We'll just do the ending.
In other words, interest, which is what I just said was, you give me $10 and I'll give you $11 back. You know, interest on the debt. They've sold a bond. It was one piece of paper that said, I'll give you 10 of these somethings, and you get a bond back which says, I'll not only give you 10 of these somethings in 30 years' time, I'll give you an extra piece of paper back as well that says, I'll give you even more things. Because that's what all these...
Yeah, right. And the government did that without collateralizing the loan. Okay, they put nothing on the table to collateralize the loan except the word of the currency. They basically said, we'll pay you back in currency we don't possess, that we're promised to collect from some future generation to pay back this debt. And obviously no American public was going to ever pay it back. They were never going to vote. They were never going to go into the voting booth and pay back the debt we owe. Okay, that wasn't going to happen. And so, yeah, it's a fraud, but as long as everybody just keeps playing the fraud, it can be sustained. But the point is that eventually the interest payments will become preposterous. So right now the Federal Reserve has to have artificially low interest rates because it knows the whole system crashes as soon as interest rates become real again.
Bits of paper are. They're things the government have signed saying, I will give you something. But nobody knows at all what the government's going to give you.
Well, again, see, that's where he implies that the cash paper is the same as the bond paper, is the same as the stock paper, is the same as the derivative paper, that all this paper is somehow all the same paper. And it wasn't the same paper. It wasn't created the same way. It wasn't governed by the same rules. All right, so it's just wrong to sit there and call it all the same thing and to call it all stupid. It was stupid to borrowing money is intrinsically a negative thing. You don't want to do it as a first resort. You want to do it as a last resort. It is intrinsically problematic. It's been a problem since the day of the frickin' Bible. That's the truth of it. It's a fucking disaster.
And the moronic thing is that the government deficits take back in these bits of paper that says the government's going to give you something and give out another piece of paper saying the government's going to give you even more, when the government is not going to give you anything at all.
Yeah, well, let's understand, though, that when it gives out that actual cash, when it actually pays back a bond, okay, it's paying with something that's real, the cash, all right, and it has to account for that. And so that's what becomes the real inflation problem will be, is when they have to start printing cash to pay the bonds. And that over the last 3 years or whatever it is, they've printed an extra $2 trillion. So we went from $3 trillion in circulation 5 years ago to $5 trillion in circulation now. And there's every prospect that they're going to have to just keep fucking running the presses to pay these bonds they've issued for all this fake Fannie Mae paper where they gave away real good bonds, okay, claims on the American people's ownership of their own country. They gave away that good stuff, okay, for this garbage stock losses. We bought the stock losses from the lousiest, richest cunts in the fucking goddamn universe. We bought their bad paper, their fucking Las Vegas losses. We took their losses in and gave them real money back. And a Democratic fucking president did this. That's the fucking problem.
The whole system is totally and utterly mad.
Yeah, well, like I said, the whole system is not totally and utterly mad. Okay, the system of borrowing money, a federal government borrowing money from the rich, that's totally mad when you have no capacity to pay it back. When you're living in a democracy and the citizens are the ones who are going to decide whether the money gets paid back or not. That is idiotic. That's right. Okay? There's nothing else can be said.
It worked for the 1% in the 17th century. And why we're still doing it is a total mystery. But it just seems, and I think it's because...
Yeah, well, we weren't still doing it, okay? I mean, look, realistically, from 1930 to 1960, or 1970 even, we didn't borrow a ton of money, okay? We had the war debt, and then we were pretty civilized for 40 years, and then everything, Ronald Reagan got elected, and the whole thing went to fucking hell in terms of voodoo economics and nonsense. So let's give the tax breaks first, and we'll cut the spending later, and we'll pay the bills later. And that's been the philosophy for 40 fucking years, 30 years, and that's why the whole fucking thing is a joke now. But it wasn't a joke in 1970. It's a joke now.
Of extra energy being dug out of the ground, that really the world has been so swimmingly, wonderfully, can't go bloody wrong.
Yeah, well, whatever. The world isn't doing any of that can't go bloody wrong kind of shit anyway. I mean, yeah, we're all advancing because of technology and a lot of the wonderful energy crap that we've had, this cheap resource. Yeah, but 7 billion people, we're cutting it really thin in terms of any kind of margin of error here, in terms of energy production. So yeah, if the economy was to dare to succeed, it would fail because of the inability to increase the supply of the resource, the energy resource. And if it fails, the energy resource will be irrelevant because it's going to get cheap again eventually because no one will be using any of it anymore. So supply won't be a problem anymore. Yeah.
With all this new energy coming online, that it hasn't really mattered. We've basically been able to screw up and have the most wild and stupid and crazy systems for doing things.
Yeah, well, they are wild and crazy and stupid. And they're wild and crazy and stupid because we allowed people to take good investment capital and waste it on their gardens and on their yachts and on their mansions and on their other silly indulgences. Instead of building Hoover dams, instead of building internet infrastructure, instead of building even a good space program and all the other things we could have wasted the money on, where engineers would do good engineering, we could be investing in science, we could be investing in something useful to the basic citizens of the country, and instead we're investing in a bunch of Lamborghinis and other luxury items for fucking rich people. And then we think they're giving us good jobs. No, they're giving us shit jobs. Pointless, wasted jobs, wasted work, wasted energy, and it's reduced the value of all labor through that mechanism. The rich are fucking evil. The renters, the landlords are evil. Fuck the landlords. Fuck the surplus holders. Fuck the hoarders. Fuck the inherited luxury wealthy motherfuckers. The privileged class who think they're entitled by birthright. Fuck that bullshit. Put the money back into the system, put it back into the currency, and quit paying rent to these bastards, these emperors, these worse than the fucking king. These fucking rich people are worse than fucking kings. Alright. Off with their fucking heads.